Hello everybody. In a time when we're all struggling to take in the enormity of the pandemic that is sweeping across our world, seemingly unchecked, we can easily feel very small, very vulnerable, very scared. How important it is to keep reminding ourselves that our God is mighty and powerful. He's the Lord of Lords. He's the King of Kings. He's the Lord of the whole earth. I've just been reading through the book of Daniel, and some words in chapter 2 really jumped out at me when Daniel stands before the most powerful king, Nebuchadnezzar, and assures him there is a God in heaven. Daniel's situation was probably even more scary than ours. His country had been invaded by Nebuchadnezzar's army, and he'd been snatched from his home, carried off into slavery. He's living in a foreign land, ruled by a cruel despot. He's isolated, he's lonely, he has no idea what the future holds for him. But he knows that God is trustworthy. He continues to pray, he continues to worship God in a foreign land. He knows that his God is still there and that he's powerful. He can stand before the king and boldly say, "There's a God in heaven." I came across a quote by Martin Luther recently. You'll remember he was a German monk, a leading figure in the Protestant Reformation that swept across Europe in the 1500s. His teaching challenged and upset lots of people, powerful people, and his life was very often threatened. But he said, "The fear of men diminishes in proportion to the consciousness of the greatness of God." So when we remember how big our God is, we see our fears in a new perspective. Martin Luther trusted in a God who was great, and he lived putting that trust to the test, and as a result, dealing with his own fears. His God was greater. Especially when we're feeling afraid, we need to know that our God is big enough, bigger than the issues we face, bigger than this horrible virus and all its effects. It's easy to feel we don't have the faith to cope with the challenge, but we need to remember it's not the size of our faith that matters, as much as our faith being in a very big God. There is a God in heaven. Those words jumped out at me because as a child they were very familiar to me. My mother had written them out in a beautiful script as a birthday present for my father. But she hadn't ended it there. Underneath the proclamation she'd added, "He cares for you." That illustrated text stood framed on the piano in our lounge all through my childhood. There is a God in heaven. He cares for you. See, our God is not a distant, powerful despot. He's not remote or aloof or uncaring. The amazing truth is that he cares for us. He cares about us. He knows just what we're facing right now and has promised to be with us in it all. He cares. He knows. He understands. That second text comes from one of Peter's letters. The full verse says, "Cast all your anxiety on him, for he cares for you." It's wonderful, amazing that the Lord of the whole earth should care for us. And he wants us to rest in that care. But he also invites us to bring our cares to him. He invites our response. It says, "Cast all your anxiety on him." We're not meant to be bystanders, waiting for God to make everything better for us. He wants us to verbalise our anxieties, our worries, and tell him about it. Cast all your anxiety on him. Cast is a very active word. It suggests a deliberate action. We might say throw or fling or hurl. It's not a gentle "please bless me" prayer. Our Father wants us to tell him just how it is for us. He invites us to be honest with him. Any parent can tell when their child has a problem, but needs that child to share it so they can talk about it, find a way forward together. In the same way, God knows everything about us already. But like any parent, he longs for us to share with him the things that trouble us, hence his lovely invitation. When God acts to show his care, he often uses his servants, us, to express that care. Have you ever noticed that when you pray about something, you sometimes become an answer to your prayers? When God might say to you, well, why don't you do something about it? There are a lot of people right now who are fearful, desperate to know God's care. What's God calling you to do? Is there someone you might offer to shop for? Is there someone lonely on their own at home who'd really value a phone call? Perhaps a text to encourage them. Maybe even a real treat of a handwritten letter. Or someone you can pray for. God often calls us to be involved in his demonstration of care. So we need to hold on to both these facets of God's character. He is Almighty God, great and powerful beyond anything that we can imagine. But he's just as great in his love and his care. He's our loving Father, present with us, caring for us. So may I leave these two texts with you today. I hope they will encourage you. There is a God in heaven. He cares for you. May God bless you this day.